Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm coming to you from London, England. I have been working with Jarrah Aerotechnics Limited for some time now, and I've been involved with transportation and aviation for many years. I'm doing a lot of research and work now with the International Space University, as well as Venere University in Florida. And I have been involved with a lot of artificial intelligence and cyber security at my previous university that was in Washington, D.C. My talk to you today is about artificial intelligence and its role in transportation and logistics. Now, I have been listening to some excellent presentations before, and many of these have been looking at some very detailed parts of transportation, logistics and management. I would like to take a step back and look at a much bigger picture, and in particular to think about Tanzania, Kenya, East Coast Africa and Africa, and what's happening in the future, short, medium and long term. Now, what I'm presenting today, projects that are looking at associated direct areas related to this conflict. In addition to that, I've been have worked on some industrial research projects, individual research and publications, but also on various committees that are dealing with AI and AI research as it's happening. And what I want to do is to pull all of those together, put them in context of what we're doing here, both nationally and across the continent, mainly. And that's my focus. Now, there's a problem with this slide, sorry. Here we are with the logistics and the central hubs of the world. And if we look at this, we can see by the size of the red circle in each of the places, the centre of logistics distribution, in particular for aviation, in the world as we are today. Now, there are obviously two big central areas, and they are Europe and it is America. And if we look at those areas, we can see the reasons why. The transatlantic trade that happens, UPS, FedEx, everything else, and all of those. But let's start looking at this a little bit more in detail and thinking what it means. Now, when you look at Australia and New Zealand, we have 4 hubs. But let's think about it. In those 4 hubs, there are not many people who live in Australia and New Zealand. It is, if we look at it as a 2-dimensional map, at the extreme ends of the world. But look at Africa. Africa is larger than so many other places. If we look at America and Australia, it will fit into Africa in real area terms. Now, there are reasons why there are not so many major hubs in here. But I think this is not only an advantage, but it's also a potential problem if the advantage is not exploited and followed through. And we are now at the dawn of a time when we need to be doing this. Again, let's think about the world. Africa is possibly, estimates, 15% of the world's population, but increasing, and I will cover that soon. In terms of Asia, we all know that there's a very high percentage, China and India, then Pakistan, Indonesia and Bangladesh. account for approaching half of the world's population. Australia is very small. Europe is even smaller than Africa. And North America is only half that of Africa. And then South America, again, is even less than North America. With population comes swings in terms of what happens and what is needed. Now, okay, 15%, we should argue that there are more centres of distribution for transportation globally than in Europe because of the sheer numbers. But then we know the logistics of getting around Africa, and with the high number of over 50 countries with Africa compared to other parts of the world. So there are these borders and things. But we're talking logistics, transportation and management. And we need to be thinking about the much bigger picture for whatever we're doing. And this is where I think it's important for us to be deciding where that's going. Now here is some latest data of trends that are happening in terms of the population. And if you look at the bottom, Asia is increasing its population and will peak, they reckon, or estimate, in about 15 years' time. And then it will be slowly reducing. So its peak is almost soon. Let's look at the rest of the world, Europe, North America, Far East, and everything like that. They too will be increasing, but from not a lot. There's certainly no more than about 1 billion people. Europe's population is predicted to stay around about 500 million, very little change. The most important information from this particular slide is telling us that the African population will increase and increase until the end of the century. We are talking that it's going to potentially be 3 to 4 billion people. Africa will be the biggest concentration of people in the world. Now I know many of you there are aware of this, and I know many of you there are involved in some of the situations. But let's think about the inputs and the positive side of what this means. Africa is going to become the predominant continent of the world. It's going to exceed Asia. It's going to dwarf the likes of Europe and North America. Let's add to that. Let's add it in the detail in thinking about the resources that are in Africa. The gold, the cobalt, the precious metals, the diamonds, the oil in various parts like this. And if we look, that the potential for the resources in Africa exceeds almost anywhere else. This is going to make a seismic change in the world as it happens. And if it isn't planned, if we don't think of the logistics and we don't think of it now, we are going to miss an opportunity of artificial intelligence. Let's go forward 75 years. The largest population, the largest area of resources, the largest potential, the expansion of Africa that is happening. And we are seeing, and I'll use the example, the amazing transport system from Mombasa to Nairobi, which is of a world-class standard of trains. That is rolling out across the whole of Africa. It is not a country, or it's not a continent, that is starting to have the image of what people, the difficulties of transportation from the roads and the maintenance. That is changing quickly. And let us remind ourselves, in 35 years, the transportation system of trains alone in China has been absolutely amazing. With that type of infrastructure and investment in Africa, plus all the other things, there is a potential that all of this will be missed. And that is why we are now at the dawn of what is the greatest period, I think, of Africa. Now here was a snapshot of aircraft flying around the world, and in particular of Africa. There's not so many in Africa. We know there are fewer airports and there are fewer hubs and things. But that is going to change. And the important thing is, it needs to be incorporated in China. Europe is busy, Africa is not. Europe's population is static, Africa is not. the potential market and the exports and everything else, and even the income package needs to be incorporated. But why am I worried? I'm worried about this for several reasons. And it's the dawn of artificial intelligence. I've set up and I've run and supervised lots of artificial intelligence PhD projects. And looking at all the sides around here. But let's think about artificial intelligence. A calculator. This is a multiplication question that all of us here could answer. We'd certainly most likely need a pencil and paper, and we could do this relatively quickly and work out. Or the calculator. We don't even have to put the number in, we can talk to it and tell me what the answer is. But a calculator has no idea what it's doing. It goes through a set of protocols and algorithms, and it comes up using zeros and ones on the electronic inputs of the microelectronics, and then it converts the result of those algorithms into a screen, and what is shown on the screen means something to us. A calculator is not clever. It just processes ones and zeros together. Let's take that a step further. ChatGPT. It will write you an essay on most subjects. Any involved in education are now trying to stop ChatGPT being students' ways of answering the homework question. Again, it's an artificial intelligence system, just using ones and zeros. Artificial intelligence is learning in terms of computer language. And there are two types of learning, supervised and unsupervised. And this is important. Supervised means that it goes to humans to verify, to move on. Unsupervised means it makes its own decisions and moves forward. And just think and stop at this level. If unsupervised artificial intelligence is planning the future of transportation and logistic hubs around the world, with the data it's got at the moment, it will not incorporate Africa. Because there is little demand, and it's working on known data. It may use projections and different things like this. But it is a statistical method, and it works on probabilities. And what it sees is Europe, North America, parts of the Far East, and different things, and is evaluating Australia and New Zealand as a higher demand. Airports don't happen overnight. New roads and trains and infrastructure are decades in the planning, the finance, the implementation, and producing. And then the hubs that it produces take even further. If we look at Silicon Valley in America, it took 20 years for setting it up, encouraging people there, for it to become the world that it is. So what we do now will shape Africa for the next 20 years. And what we need is supervised analysis of African data, artificial intelligence modelling, in particular focusing on transportation. At the moment, there is a bias, and that bias is what is potentially a problem for Africa. But it's not too late. And I think we can see today that this expert conference is sponsored by the government, the Department of Transportation. We have those audiences here already to remind them what we can do and the potential. And we need this supervised learning of artificial intelligence from the potential on what is happening with Africa to remove the bias that happens. Now, half an hour ago, someone was doing a very good presentation about the communications and the bus systems and different things, and how the difficulties in that process. Well, you think we classified people in low income, middle and high income. And that is very true, and while there may be more low income parts of Africa, that is changing. Remind ourselves of India, where now 20 to 25% of Indians are classified as middle class. That's 400 million people. That is a huge, huge audience for people to sell, to buy, to manufacture, to deal with. And this is where we are. This is what I want to be thinking about and asking you to think. I'm not going to give you any answers today, because there aren't. But answers can be generated by this audience. And they can be used for the betterment of transportation and logistics in this continent. So as we say, AI is already learning logistics and transportation. And at the moment, the unsupervised learning of its prediction has a form of bias. That is a bias that we need to be addressing and thinking. Supervised learning will not include population changes. That is something that has to be addressed fast. And this is at government, national, continent, and even through the United Nations. At present, if we do nothing, there will be no change. Africa will miss out on the legacy that will lead to other concerns for other aspects. There is a huge amount that we can deal with. And these are the areas that we've been talking about. We hear AI, we hear about it, ChatGPT, and everything else. But it is building up enormous amounts of data, statistical data, modelling and planning on current information. And that is where Africa has more potential than any other part of the world. And this is where I'm encouraging people in this audience to think about this. Think about your role and how you can be implemented and instrumental in this happening. It's not too late. Indeed, we can see today this is a form of national, regional and continental organisations. We can look at all of these. Governments can ensure the bias is removed. And we need to be thinking about the population and the wealth and something called PPP, GDP. And I'll spend a little moment going on. Many of you here have heard of this, but some of you may not. And PPP, GDP, is to do with the spending power of people in a country. And I'll use the example. Russia at the moment has the fourth highest PPP GDP. People in Russia may not have as much money as Europe or in North America, but their spending power of what they can buy is substantially higher than it is in Europe or North America. This value for Africa is going to increase and increase substantially. We can see the political discussions on the west coast of Africa, how the use of gold and reserves and the actual mining of precious metals, which are going to be paramount for future electronic and AI futures. This is all within the grasp of people and the continent of Africa. But it's not being utilised in the way that it should be. AI is new. AI is slightly different from computers. Computing really was dictated to by America. It was the Silicon Valley and everything else. AI is being done by a lot of people with numerical, statistical, computer skill sets and things, of which there are people spread all over, indeed Africa. There are some very high-level people involved in Africa with this high-level product, AI. And this is where we need to be thinking. And if we try to summarise this, put it all together, AI will not automatically incorporate potential, but we know it exists where Africa is based, in this particular area. Africa will become a principal player in this sector. But that needs to be maximum. It needs to be pushed by all and with a political influence. Make the future its own and not others. You can already see in some of the pictures how it's being ignored at the moment. Businesses want long-term success, and that is possible within Africa. It is now the time for Africa. All the planets are aligned in Africa with artificial intelligence and with the situation within Africa and its potential. And I'm very cognizant that I'm coming up to 20 minutes now, and keeping on time with conferences is very important for each. So I would like to stop that and say thank you for your time and attention. No, it's been a slightly different focus than many other presenters, but you can see where I'm coming from with the big picture. and I'll stop sharing my slides now. And if anyone has any questions, myself and Jared, who's with me in this, we will be delighted to answer questions now or at some time in the future if you have any.